Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the daily readings of Prabhupada's books here in Hythe. What is Hythe called? Is it a village? The village. The village of Hythe, and we have the village prince of Hythe here, Radha Raman. It's his flat we're living in. And I'm with Abhay Das Brahmachari, who's taking care of me so nicely. And we could be a lot worse off, I'll tell you, frankly. I'm paying attention to what's going on in the world, and there's a lot of suffering going on out there now. And we should be detached, but Srila Prabhupada told us many times that when we see the sufferings of others, we should feel compassion and empathy for them. We shouldn't feel that detachment means not to feel empathy and sympathy for others, especially when they're sick, or to speak of their, the things that are happening in the world today. So let us meditate like that and deeply pray to Srila Prabhupada in gratitude and Lord Chaitanya for the knowledge he's given us and the stability that's given our hearts and our intelligences in Krishna consciousness. Of course, we're all in different positions in Krishna consciousness, but compared to the general mass of people, we are greatly fortunate. And imagine they're all barricaded in homes and they can't go out, and they got really nothing meaningful to do, most of them. So let us ourselves become fully Krishna conscious as soon as possible. It's an urgent need in the world. And this is the way to do it, to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam every day in the association of the Vaishnavas. It's magic. I think everyone who's tuning in every day is very much aware of just how magical it is to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. I got one very nice note from Vilas Manjari in Australia, and she's been a very loyal hearer, follower of these daily readings for more than a year, maybe even more than that, every day. And she started up her own groups, and now she had one very elderly lady, 76-year-old lady in a village in Australia somewhere, and she got a Gita, and she started reading with Vilas Manjari on the internet. And the first thing she said was, after the first time she ever heard, she said, I feel like there's something inside of me that I've known all along that's being reawakened. So we should know that there are people out there who are innocent and pure-hearted and who will take to this Srimad Bhagavatam very quickly. So it's our duty to become Krishna conscious and to try to spread Krishna consciousness the best we can according to our position and our capacity. So that's my today's thought for the day. Hare Krishna. So let's hear Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotram from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava by Srila Sanatana Goswami. It gives a snapshot of what the Bhagavatam is in very sutric language, but deep, to help us go deeper. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Shri Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwando Ditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life, air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadutadayin atinicho chatakada hanamun chagadachin mam premna rit kantayospuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, the 11th canto is entitled General History. And it contains many lovely stories and transcendental instructions. But the best of all of them is the Uddhava Gita, where Krishna personally instructs Uddhava in all knowledge. And then, of course, we know that then he asked him to stay back when he left the planet and to teach these things, particularly to the sages at Badrikashram, the only place of significance that Krishna didn't go while he was here with us on the planet Earth. And they were the most qualified. So he wanted to send the person most qualified to represent him, and that was Uddhava. You remember that Krishna sent Uddhava to Vrindavan to witness and observe the transcendental love that the residents of Vrindavan, especially the gopis and Srimati Radharani, had for him. And in this way, Uddhava was completely enlightened to the topmost perfection. And so he's being asked by Krishna to pass this on, this knowledge. So now we've reached the 11th canto. In the 11th canto, we reach the 20th chapter, and it's a wonderful title, Pure Devotional Service, Surpasses Knowledge and Detachment. The processes of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga are explained in this chapter in terms of the presence of different good and bad qualities, in terms of the presence of different good and bad qualities in particular candidates. The Vedic Shastras are the words expressing the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In these Vedic literatures is found an outlook of duality, based on such concepts as the Varnashram system, and at the same time, the Vedas reject this dualistic vision. Uddhava, desiring to understand the reason why the scriptures contain such conflicting ideas and how these might be reconciled, inquired from Lord Sri Krishna about this matter. In response, the Supreme Lord replied that the Vedas describe the processes of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga for facilitating the attainment of liberation. Karma Yoga is designated for those persons who are not detached and who are full of gross desires. Jnana Yoga is for those who are detached from the fruits of activity and have given up material endeavors. And Bhakti Yoga is for those persons who have taken to the principle of Yukta Vairagya, appropriate renunciation. As long as one has not become uninterested in enjoying the fruits of one's work, or as long as one's faith in the topics of discussion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead on the path of devotional service has not awakened, then one must continue to fulfill all the prescribed duties of his karma. But neither the renunciant nor the devotee of the Supreme Lord need carry out ritualistic duties. Persons who follow their own duty, who abandon that which is forbidden, and who are free from greed and other unhealthy characteristics, attain either monistic knowledge, or else, if they are fortunate, devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such knowledge and devotion can be achieved in the human form of life, which is therefore a desirable object both for those living in hell and for the demigods. The human body, even though it awards the whole purpose of existence in the form of knowledge and devotion, is ephemeral. Therefore, one who is discriminating should soberly strive for liberation before death comes. The human body is like a boat. Sri Gurudev is the helmsman, and the mercy of the Supreme Lord is the favorable breeze. If the person who has attained such a rare boat in the form of the human body does not desire to cross over the ocean of material existence, he is in fact the killer of the soul. The mind is fickle. The mind is fickle. But one should not indifferently allow it to act as it will. Rather, one should conquer the senses and the vital air, and by intelligence, endowed with the qualities of goodness, should bring the mind under control. Until the mind finally becomes stable, one should continue to meditate about the process of the creation of all material things in sequence from subtle to gross, and of their destruction in reverse sequence of gross to subtle. One who has a sense of detachment and renunciation can give up false identification with the body and other sense objects by constantly studying the instructions of his spiritual master. By the yoga practice of yama, niyama, and so forth, by cultivation of transcendental knowledge, and by worship and meditation upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can remember the Supersoul. Virtue, or guna, means to remain steadfast in the object of one's particular platform of qualification. By developing the desire to reject one's accumulated material association, by pursuing the injunctions of what is good and what is bad, all of one's inauspicious material activities become diminished. By devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all perfections are achieved. Anyone who renders service to the Supreme Lord by constant devotional service will be able to steadily fix his mind upon the Supreme Lord. And thus all desires for sense gratification sitting within the heart will be destroyed to the root. When one directly perceives the presence of the Supreme Lord, his false ego becomes completely eradicated. All of his doubts are shattered, and heaps of material activities become diminished to nil. For this reason, the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead do not consider knowledge and renunciation to be the means for achieving the highest benefit. Only in the heart of a person who is devoid of material desire and disinterested in material things can devotional service to the Lord arise. The piety and impiety that result from ritualistic injunctions and prohibitions cannot be applied to the unalloyed, pure devotees of the Supreme Lord. What a nice summary of this chapter. Can't wait to hear the details. They say the devil is in the details, but in this case, the angels are in the details. Text 1. Sri Uddhava said, "My dear lotus-eyed Krishna, you are the Supreme Lord, and thus the Vedic literatures, consisting of positive and negative injunctions, constitute your order. Such literatures focus upon the good and bad qualities of work." Purport. At the end of the previous chapter, Lord Krishna stated, "Guna dosha drishir dosho, gunas tubhaya varjitaha." Focusing upon material piety and sin is itself a discrepancy, since actual piety means to transcend both of them. Sri Uddhava now pursues this point, so that Lord Krishna will give a more elaborate explanation of this difficult subject matter. Sri Uddhava here states that the Vedic literatures, which constitute the laws of God, deal with piety and sin. Therefore, it must be clarified how one transcends activities recommended in the Vedas. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, Uddhava suddenly understood Lord Krishna's purpose in the words he had just spoken. And to induce the Lord to elaborate upon this interesting point, Uddhava outwardly challenged the Lord's statement. Text 22. So this is interesting, because we're taught not to approach the spiritual master in a challenging spirit, not to try to defeat or go above or become or display our knowledge in front of the spiritual master. But sometimes there are exceptions. One comes to mind when Gopakumar met the Mathura Brahmana, who was sent to him by Srimati Radharani to give her mercy to him. Gopakumar noticed that he was very materialistic. Although he had received the mercy of Radharani, he was still very materialistic. He was very new and he was very green. He wasn't ripe at all. And then he thought, normally one does not enjoy or one does not explain one's own glories to another person, especially a Vaishnava, doesn't do that. But in this case, because the preaching warranted it, it was the only way that this materialistic person could be captured and attracted and could get the right idea. So therefore, the whole second part of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita is Gopakumar explaining to the Mathura Brahmana how he became Krishna conscious and all the glorious things that happened to him along the way, and how he learned everything by the mercy of his spiritual master. So in this case, it's similar. Uddhava has realized what Krishna is saying, but he wants the details to come out. And so he's kind of like questioning, what is this, seemingly contradictory thing, that the Vedas are the source of all knowledge, and yet they mainly deal with materialistic things, and therefore we have to, more or less transcend them, transcend the Vedas. So now we're going to hear invaluable instruction on how to this, how to actually transcend those sections of the Vedas which keep us still engaged in the modes of material nature, albeit toward the mode of goodness. Very valuable instructions. Translation. Text 2. According to Vedic literature, the superior and inferior varieties found in the human social system, varnashram, are due to pious and sinful modes of family planning. Thus, piety and sin are constant points of reference in the Vedic analysis of the components of a given situation, namely, the material ingredients, place, age, and time. Indeed, the Vedas revealed the existence of material heaven and hell, which are certainly based on piety and sin. Purport. Pratiloma indicates the combination of a superior woman with an inferior man. For example, Vidaiteka, the Vaidehaka. For example, the Vaidehaka community consists of those born of a Shudra father and a Brahmana mother, whereas the Sutas are those born from a Kshatriya father and a Brahmana mother, or from a Shudra father and a Kshatriya mother. Anuloma indicates those born from a superior father and inferior mother. The Mordavasikta are those born of a Brahmana father and a Kshatriya mother. Ambashtas are those born from a Brahmana father and a Vaishya mother, and they often become medical men. Karana indicates those born of a Vaishya father and Shudra mother, or of a Kshatriya father and Vaishya mother. That such mixing of castes is not very much appreciated in the Vedic culture is demonstrated in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna was very worried that the death of so many Kshatriyas on the battlefield would lead to the mixing of superior women with inferior men, and on those grounds he objected to fighting. In any case, the entire Vedic social system is based on distinguishing between piety and sin, and Sri Uddhava is encouraging the Lord to explain more elaborately his statement that one should transcend both piety and sin. Text 3. Without seeing the difference between piety and sin, how can one understand your own instructions in form of the Vedic literatures, which order one to act piously and forbid one to act sinfully? Furthermore, without such authorized Vedic literatures which ultimately award liberation, how can human beings achieve the perfection of life? Purport. If one does not accept the necessity of performing pious activities and avoiding sinful activities, it becomes very difficult to understand authorized religious scriptures. And without such scriptures, how can human beings attain salvation? This is the essence of Sri Uddhava's question. Text 4. My dear Lord, to understand those things beyond direct experience, such as spiritual liberation or the attainment of heaven and similar material enjoyments, and in general to understand the means and end of all things, it is imperative that the forefathers, demigods, and human beings consult the Vedic literature